Hey there everyone, Hitesh here, back again with another video, and welcome back to the series on AWS Cloud. We are trying to prepare for our very first exam, Certified Cloud Practitioner, and yes, I took a little bit break. It was really cold outside and in my home as well. So I decided that, hey, it's really cold, let's take some break. Enjoy some tea, enjoy some warm sun if it is there, which was a rare case. But anyways, this was all. I was having some fun. But now I'm back with recording the videos, and there's so much that we have to put on this channel. The preparation is being done. It was not like I was all the time sipping up the tea. It was also that I was preparing a lot of notes, content, material, and all of that you are going to see on this channel from now onwards. So if the temperature remains on the bearable level. So in this video, we'll start with the very first video of our practitioner exam preparation. There's a lot of discussion that we need to do so that you can answer all these questions in the exam properly and with the proper mindset. This video is all about that. And by the way, I'll also refer you some of the direct notes which are there from the AWS website and which one you should focus more. By the way, I have included all of them in this video, so don't worry. By the way, we are also setting up some target for the comment section because I need some motivation. So I think let's get started with just 100 comments. Can we do that in 24 hours? That would be my motivation. If you can give me that motivation, that would be awesome. Anyways, let's get started. Hope you'll be able to finish that up. So first of all, let me share the screen so that we can have a discussion. And oops, looks like I don't have my iPad up and running. So just give me a second and I'll make sure my iPad is running. So just give me a moment. And it's been a while that we haven't connected this. All right, looks great. Let me share the screen again one more time. And there we go. Finally, this time we are having the screen. So what we're going to see in this video is let's talk about the cloud, because this video is all about that. And we'll be talking about the traditional infrastructure versus the cloud. You need to first understand the mindset behind these exams. These exams really advocate about that everybody should be moving into the cloud. Now, I totally understand that you might be having a different perspective that for some needs, maybe the cloud is not the right choice, but this is exam preparation. It doesn't give a damn about what you think. It's about what they want you to think about. So no matter whenever the debate comes about a traditional infrastructure versus the cloud, in all the exams, you should prefer the cloud. That is the whole idea. I know it sounds a little bit controversial, but that's the whole idea. And even if you think from the perspective that these days you can just build anything and deploy that, and maybe 1,000 users or 1,000,000 users can access your application, that is all because we should be thanking to the cloud itself. It was not at all possible. When you hear about the stories that this company was started in the garage, that whole garage was not just somebody was writing the code there. It was all about that somebody was there who had the infrastructure there, all those servers and racks were there so that they can connect to the internet and serve their website. This was a challenging thing. These days, startups just think about building their application and doesn't really focus on how should they scale up the things, how should things be there. This is all because of the cloud infrastructure what we have. So first of all, you'll be facing a lot of questions in this exam which are all about having the objective is to move into the cloud from the on-prem. On-prem is another term known as on-premises, when you have your racks and servers and RAMs and storage, everything in-house. Yes, this used to be a days, and I have worked with one such company in my college days where there was this guy who was having all these infrastructure at his home. Yep. Had all these air conditioners and everything. So this was the case with the on-premises, but now we are moving on to the cloud era. So the objective is to move into that. Let's talk about a little bit about how the traditional infrastructure looks like versus how does the cloud infrastructure looks like, so that you can answer some of the questions that are being asked to you in the exams. So in the traditional infrastructure, we used to have something known as server. Now, a lot of people believe that server is a big, gigantic computer. It is not. It is just a piece of software which is running on a really powerful hardware. So we have our servers, which are softwares. We have some of our storage, maybe a hard disk or maybe a solid state drive, SSDs. And on top of that, we also need some ways to connect to the internet. So we have our routers, we have our switches, and we have our firewalls to protect some of the attacks and all these stuffs. So this used to look like a traditional hardware infrastructure, and this was really real. Now, this is not your ordinary laptop because the infrastructure that you buy for the server usage is a little bit more expensive than your ordinary infrastructure for your laptops or your personal usage. In the server components, we usually focus more on the redundancy so that if one component goes down, it doesn't mean it just takes down the entire website. So redundancy is the key. But on top of that, these machines need to be active throughout the day, 24 by 7 for 365 days. So they need to be really of high quality. That's why you see the on-prem infrastructure when you try to buy them, they are a bit of expensive. On the other hand, oh, by the way, one more thing, you own everything or rent it out. Now, there is a concept in the on-prem devices or managing your own infrastructure is either you have to own everything. So if you want to put up a website, you have to think about how can I buy the hard disk? How can I buy the RAM? So how much RAM should I buy? 2 GB or 200 GB? What should I plug it in? And all of that. But there are some companies, of course, there are available in India as well and outside. Of course, there are thousands of them who allows you to rent them also. They have their infrastructure already, which have all these backup powers and generators and whatnot. And they allows you to put your own racks. And in that, you can put up your hardwares. But again, that's a mix of cloud and on-prem. We'll talk about them. On the other hand, if we move on to the cloud infrastructure, which is mostly on demand, this is the keyword which you'll see in throughout the exams, no matter what exam you'll be preparing, because the whole idea behind the cloud is on demand. You just have a button, and with the press of a button, you can increase your RAM from 2 GB to 200 GB to back to 2 GB. This is a crazy power. You don't have to think about buying the infrastructure. Now, imagine for a moment that you have to do this when your company is managing your own on-prem services. It is crazy because let's just say you are a DevOps guy or an ops guy purely, and you think that we need more storage. You cannot just go ahead and add the plug-in the storage. You have to first justify your statement by writing a report for that. Then that report needs to be submitted to your manager, and the manager is going to submit to no matter what, I don't know how many levels of the managers these days people have. And on top of that, then the final boards of directors and whoever CTO, whoever is taking the decision that this pricing or this purchase is justified and we need to do that. Then they will place the order, that order will come back, and then that order, after checking into the inventory and whatnot, will be handed over to you. Now it's your responsibility to plug that in and manage all the software on top of that so that somebody can make one more image or one more video on that server. It's crazy, gigantic. But on the other hand, if we talk about the cloud, we never think about it. We just have so many clouds these days, AWS, Azure, Vercel, Heroku, whatnot. We have just to think about putting the things on the demand. Of course, there are a variety of cases in that sometimes we share our resources, sometimes we not. In most of the cloud, you will be sharing the resources. This is how the infrastructure is designed, but not to be taken. There are special government clouds, even on AWS as well, which are kept totally separate, totally segmented from the other public usage. Nobody uses that, no sharing is done on that. It is possible and it is being done. So remember that shared resource is the majority usage, but there are government clouds in AWS as well. And it is for anyone. Anybody can just make an account, and if you have money, that's it. You can just host your application there. There is no such thing that from where to buy, who will ship it. There is no such thing. The most important thing about the cloud is the elasticity. And the most key important feature, always remember this example, whenever there is a streaming, especially when there is a cricket in India, the elasticity is one of the things which makes it possible for having whole of this circus. Otherwise, it would not be possible. It is comparatively easy, I'm not saying all easy, but it is comparatively easy to scale the infrastructure up, but it is extremely difficult to scale it down. When there are a million people watching it, you can raise up your compute machines, but when people suddenly drops down of half of the people, scaling it down is really difficult, but not comparatively that difficult in the cloud world. So that elasticity is one of the key features. You should write them down in the notes. It will be asked like left and right. Another thing which you'll be asked in quite a number of questions, at least one or two, is pay-as-you-go model. Cloud focuses a lot on pay-as-you-go model. You don't pay for what you don't use. If you use something, then only you pay for it. A lot of time this is being mistaken that, hey, I just spinned up this EC2 machine, but I was not using it. It accidentally remains spinned up. So should I pay for it? Yes, you will be paying it because from the cloud perspective, you have spinned up a machine. So you have taken some of the resources from us. You will be charged for that. Not all the machines are payable, but definitely you should make sure that it is in your mind that pay as you go is the model for the cloud. All right, so quite a lot of theoretical stuff, but yeah, I know it is important for the exam perspective. You'll be getting a lot of idea about what the cloud is, how should I expect that, and once you learn it from here, you don't need to learn it in all the other clouds like Azure or whatever you are preparing. Moving on, this is a fun example. I think we should all do it together. Now imagine that you are building Dropbox from scratch. Why I picked up Dropbox? Because it handles a lot of data. You need a lot of storage for that. Now imagine the same exercise that you have to do. The first step is already a lot of hindrance in just joining the game, which is buying the hardware. What hardware to buy, how much hardware to buy, do we need the backup of the hardware, do we need the backup of power supply, and how we will be doing all of this, who will be giving us the best price. This is the first entry point barrier in just building a Dropbox. These days on the YouTube, you find so many of the Dropbox clone never worrying about the hardware infrastructure. That's the best part. Not only just the hardware is the problem, installation of that hardware is also one of the challenge. The challenge is, if let's just say the hardware is there, do you need racks? From where to get racks? Where to place these racks? Should they be nearby to each other, or we should have some gaps? And once we start the installation, what softwares will be compatible? Is this hardware compatible to my existing hardware? Is there a version difference? Is there an upgrade in the hardware which I'm not supporting? So should I upgrade my previous hardware? You get the idea. It's really powerful. And then expansion. Now you decided that, hey, you know what, 1 petabyte would be good enough to start my company, but you realize that, hey, it's filled now, I need to expand it. How much should you expand? 5 petabytes or 10 petabytes? Or how much should you invest in that? It's a big question. Expansion is not easy. And once you are done sorting all the hardware, then there is an operation cost on the softwares. What software you will be interacting, it's not like you just plug and play the hard disk. You need to have some software to give you all the spaces, all the information, which sectors are corrupted, so much more. So this is your operation cost. While on the other hand, if you want to build something like a Dropbox, maybe a smaller service for your own friends and some things like that, you can just log in into AWS and they will offer you that, hey, this is what we cost. This is our base initial price. You just pick your services. I want this service, I want that service, I need upload service, I need processing service. There's a whole lot of services available. And you scale on the click. If you see that, hey, you know what, a lot of traffic is coming up, you can do load balancing. If you think your storage is almost full, you can just plug in more storage. And the software cost still remains here. There is a cost to develop such softwares as well that will remain constant whether you buy your own hardware or not. But these days, the more focus is on let's build the software. Hardware is already taken care of by the cloud. So that's the advantage of the cloud. Now, this is another question that comes up in the exam as well as it is mentioned in the AWS documentation as well, that you should have the mindset and the types of the cloud that is being provided. Now, you'll see most of them in almost all books and even in the college exams and all of that. The first one is infrastructure as a service, IaaS, pretty mouthful, but this is the first type of the cloud in which the whole idea is how much responsibility comes onto your end. That's the whole idea of the difference between the types of the cloud. When you say something as an infrastructure as a cloud, I want to manage almost the infrastructure, but not really the infrastructure. That means you will not be managing the RAM and the hard disk and all of that. Your responsibility comes onto the OS level. That's our goal, what we have. So what you'll be doing is you'll be managing something like EC2 instance. What is EC2? It's just a computer. We will definitely have fun in the EC2 section, but EC2 is just a Elastic Compute Cloud. That's a fancy name of saying virtual machine. It's a computer. We also have Azure Virtual Machine. So in almost everywhere, wherever you are preparing for the cloud, you will see this infrastructure as a cloud. Another thing is a platform as a service. In the platform as a service, you don't manage your operating system. You just manage your code itself. So you focus majorly on the code part, and you just mentioned that what is the platform going to be required to run this code, whether that's a Node platform or a Java platform. You just tell that, and code is only your responsibility, not the platform underlying it. So this is known as a platform as a service. They provide you the platform, and it can be by Elastic Beanstalk, one of the service in the AWS, which actually gives you. And then we have Azure Web Apps and everybody has their own flavor in that. Now, this is one of the most popular one, which is software as a service, where you are just a consumer. You don't care about anything at all. You have seen a lot of them like YouTube. It is also a software as a service where I just upload the videos and I don't care about how much traffic is coming in, how somebody is going to make a comment, which you probably should be doing. But it is just there. Not just YouTube, there are other services like there's a Vimeo, there's a Twitter, there's a Salesforce. All of them are just SaaS, almost SaaS. Yes, you can argue with me that Twitter is not a SaaS. I also agree to some extent, but it could be converted maybe in a SaaS. YouTube definitely is getting used as one of the services underlying in the SaaS, and Salesforce is a pure SaaS. So around that. Now, on top of that, let's also summarize this, that the control over the cloud. So apart from types of the cloud, there is also a control level on the cloud, like who is controlling what, and based on that, cloud are also named like that. You might have seen them as the private cloud, public cloud, hybrid cloud, multi-cloud. It's really simple. When there is a private cloud, that means you own the hardware. So how is it different from the AWS? Is AWS a private cloud? No, AWS is a cloud provider, not a cloud itself. And the whole idea behind saying the private cloud is you have your infrastructure at some place, but you are accessing them via the internet. So they almost call this as a private cloud. You definitely own your own hardware. You definitely install and own your own software, and only you use it. So you manage your own security and the compliance and everything that's there. So let's just say if tomorrow you are serving some of the people in the European region, they want the data to be in the Europe. It's your headache, not mine headache, because it's a private cloud. You manage that. So whether you deploy a service or a hardware there, it's your job. India also restrict that the data of the Indian user should be in India. So hey, you manage it on your own. You buy more hardware and deploy them in India. On the other hand, there are public cloud, which are basically they work on economy of a scale and elasticity. So AWS actually comes into that particular zone and region. So if tomorrow Indian government says that, hey, you need to keep all the Indian users' data in India, we do have data centers in India for the AWS in Mumbai region and a couple of other regions. You can just say that, hey, all the database and everything will be actually from this region will be stored in this one, and that's it, all done. And elasticity is also there. In the private cloud, you buy your own hardware. In the public cloud, you just click the buttons and things are done. There is also a way of hybrid cloud in which you get the best of both worlds. A lot of companies, especially the security companies, like FireEye is one such company, which has their on-prem servers as well, and they actually rely a lot on the cloud services as well. Which one? That's a debate. Sometimes they use Azure, sometimes they use GCP, sometimes they use AWS as well. So depends on that. They actually manage some of their proprietary softwares that they offer, and they want to keep them in the on-prem as well. So they do that. They use that. There's a lot of hardware in their infrastructure in their offices, and a lot of hardware is on the cloud as well. So they use both of the worlds. And how do we connect them? That's a big case. You might be thinking a lot of connection is done via the internet only, but that's not the case. There is also a lot of private links which are being done. And in the later on videos, we'll see that there are so many services offered by the AWS for this. They even send you briefcase and the trucks at your premises so that you can connect the wires and transfer the data. It's a funny world. I was very surprised for the first time when I saw that they send suitcases that you can connect to your servers and transfer the data, and they'll offload it and you'll be able to see them. Like, that's the crazy one. Then I saw the truck and I said, nothing is crazy. So there are a lot of ways to connect with them. There are private links, there are VPNs, there's so much more. And then there is a multi-cloud, which is also a type of cloud in which you don't rely on one infrastructure, AWS, Azure, OpenStack. You use whatever is there, and you try to keep the things as redundant as possible. That means if one thing goes down, there is always another one which is up. And in around COVID, we have seen a lot of downtime cases in the AWS as well. It was like every week's drama that, hey, some services or entire AWS region is down. So it was so much fun in that time. But yes, again. Okay, moving further on to the next topic, which is Amazon Web Services. This is the topic that we'll be studying. So far, we have been studying just the cloud, like what's the cloud, mindset, types of the cloud, what variant it comes in, and all of that. Now we'll focus our attention purely on AWS in this case. So first of all, it's an Amazon company. Yeah, everybody knows that. And it's an on-demand cloud, pay what you go or you reserve. There's a difference between them. If you reserve, you are charged like less than 50% of the actual prices, sometimes even less than 25%. And it's a pay what you use model. If If you have commissioned yourself to use 50 GB of RAM, you'll be charged for 50 GB of RAM. If you have commissioned that I'll be using 5 GB of RAM, you'll be charged for that. So it's a pay what you use model, and reserve is always less priced because you are paying for the future. You are guaranteeing that. Okay, AWS has a lot of services, and this particular course actually touches about a lot of them. We will not go into deep dive of them, but definitely you will be knowing about breadth of services that are available there. So there are compute and storage services, which are the popular most services. I think, if I'm not wrong, storage was the very first service which was offered to the public, that hey, now you can store everything. Compute was the second, and after that a lot more services keep on coming. So there is a compute services, means you can use compute like RAM, CPUs, graphic cards, which one you want you can choose and pick. Storage services, we have database services, we have media services to store your images, videos, whatnot. Dedicated services all set up, just ready to be used for machine learning, analytics, even satellite data. Yeah, it's crazy world. Even for IoT and so much more. They are always and always every year they're adding 1 or 2 services. But this exam focuses morely about around 250 or so services. So yeah, there's a lot one. The most important thing that you should know about the AWS is the compute, storage and access and data transfer. This is where majority of the charges are there, but not the only one. AWS charges you for the compute, like how much computing devices you are commissioning for yourself. Storage and access, how much storage and how much access you want, or how quickly you want the access. Let's just say you have placed the data. You want all the time immediate access to that data, you will be charged higher. If you have placed some data and you say that, hey, I'll be intimating you that, hey, I need that data 7 days from now, and you can just ping me back. So in that case, the pricing of the access will be down. So there are lots of variant in the AWS, like the glaciers and whatnot. And then we have the data transfer. AWS, in fact, most of the cloud doesn't charge you when you put the data into the cloud. They most of the time charges you when you take the data out or you're using their bandwidth. So funny world. But don't think these are the only ones, but majority of the time, and even the AWS, the original documentation will say only these ones. But the reality is different. If you have worked in the cloud, really, you will know that you are charged for a lot more things. Even for IPs, sometimes you are charged. So yes, there's a lot more charging happens, but these are the major ones where you actually get billed. Then we have the AWS global infrastructure. So AWS is present. I'll show you in the console of AWS as well in the next video. But AWS is actually a global infrastructure. It is present in almost, definitely all continents, all livable continents where people actually live. And there's so much more available. So in the AWS, you will find a lot of regions. These are physical location. I'll walk you through with that as well. So let's just say this is my AWS region, which is available. Let's just say this is a Mumbai region or AWS East 1, East 2. They are named with different locations and all of that. You can find the map on the AWS website as well. And then each one of this location, you'll find that this is physical location. Let's assume Mumbai is the location. There are availability zone, AZs, as we call them for the short. These are the data centers. So this is my AZ-C, this is my AZ-B, and this is my AZ-1. So availability zone definitely everything needs to be redundant. So you cannot just be on one region. You have to be in multiple region. You have to have multiple zones. So in the Mumbai also, I guess there are many zones. I will verify them directly on when we'll be spinning up some of the EC2 machines. Let's assume as of now that we have 3 zones. So they are very nearby, but you can assume that if one zone goes down, other zone is not affected with that. Although that's a very rare case that even one zone will go down. But just for the case, if that goes down due to some issues, maybe water is there, too much water or something happened there, earthquake happened there, there are backups of that. So you can have multiple zones that actually protects you from pretty much like 90%, 95% of the such cases. But you can also make your application multi-region. So one is hosted in Mumbai, another one is Canada. So there are very less chances that the same calamity is happening in Mumbai and Canada as well. So even AWS actually recommends you that at least have availability zones, multi-availability zone deployment should be there, but they highly recommend that it should be multi-region as well so that your application is full pro. Always remember, they are not concerned about your toy app that you are building in your computer. They are concerned about the real companies. So imagine the bank data. You don't want your bank data to go away for that. So always keep in mind some sensitive company or something so that it will give you bigger picture. If you'll just always think about your toy application in your computer, you will never be able to answer correctly in the exam. Always keep your mind with a bigger intention, maybe loan applications, maybe bank data, or maybe a stock market data. So this needs to be protected. So you cannot afford them to just be in 1Z. Imagine you're working in the stock market data, all of your data. Now you are in a panic situation. You don't want it to be in the availability zone only C. I want it in the zone C, zone B, and zone A. Plus, I want to have at least in 3 regions as well in other continents, if it is legally allowed. Again, compliances. So regions are interconnected with AWS network. AWS network. So this zone C and zone B, definitely they are connected internally with the AWS network. AWS network, always think from the hardware first perspective. They are big actual wires which actually connects them, high speed wires. So always keep that in mind. Then on top of that, there can be a private or public. So it depends. What do you mean by public and private here? The term public and private, you can assume that public is something which you can access from the internet. Private is something which is not for your access. So what happens in, let's just say these are 2 machines that we have. Let's just say this is the database. So database has no way to get connected with the internet, outside internet. But since these 2 machines can talk to each other, only this machine's IP address is allowed to get connected with this database. No other machines, only one machine. So this machine can access internet and can be outside. So this is a public facing one. But this one, there is no way that you can directly connect or talk to that. The only way to connect with it or talk to it is via our application in this one. This is what it means by the private and public in terms of AWS global infrastructure. Of course, redundant power networking doesn't need to be said after so much of the time. Yes, everything needs to be redundant. Nothing can go down. Okay. There's so much more in the AWS to discuss about it, and these days especially you need to be knowing, but we'll not discuss about it right now. There is a CloudFront origins, there is an edge case. These days computing happens on the edge as well, especially like Next.js, Vercel, a lot of them. But don't worry, we'll talk about that. Now this is one of the common questions that is being asked from in a lot of exams. And always remember that this is directly taken, by the way, from the AWS website. I haven't built this diagram. This is directly from those guys. So AWS, in fact, all the clouds, right now we'll focus on just AWS. They have this shared responsibility model, and there is always 1 or 2 questions about shared responsibility model. AWS wants you to understand that who is responsible for what security. So always remember, this yellow part is the AWS responsibility, and this is the customer's responsibility. So just understand what is the AWS responsibility, and after that, anything that comes around is your responsibility. All right. So AWS, since they are providing you the cloud, they are providing you the hardware, they are only responsible for the hardware and the security of the hardware. Okay, giving that. So they are responsible for the regions, so and the availability zone and the edge location. So wherever that is, it's their responsibility. They also provide you hardware and global infrastructure. That means they are making sure that nobody is walking into these regions or AZs and are plugging in pen drives in the hardware. That's their responsibility. They also give you the responsibility for the compute, storage, database, and the networking. That means that they are saying that, hey, we are responsibility of the security of the compute. So if we spin up the machine, that machine by default when that spins up is not malicious. If you are using core AWS, not the third-party packages, they are responsible for that. But what you install in them, how you use that, that's your responsibility. How you are making it public accessible, not accessible, that is your responsibility. The software that AWS provide, like for example, almost everything is a software in the world of cloud. Even when you spin machines, when you spin up the RAMs, that software that when you say a RAM, you click your slider from 2 GB to 12 GB, that works, and as well as that's not malicious. That's the responsibility of the AWS. Apart from that, everything is your responsibility. I always keep this in mind that, hey, AWS will not allow anybody to walk into their facility and plug in the pen drive. Apart from that, everything else is my responsibility. That's the best way to always remember that and serve well so far. So what's your client data? Are you responsible for encryption, authentication, how you're managing your IAM, your users, who is logging in, who has the email access, server-side encryption, networking traffic, are you having low traffic, high traffic? Everything is there. There are solutions, but everything is your responsibility. Firewall, OS, when you are actually deploying your own OS, that's your responsibility. Platform, application, customer data, it's all your responsibility. A lot of tricky questions comes around with that. Once we finish up this series, we'll definitely have some practice questions, and definitely without practice questions, you cannot actually clear the exam. That is a straight up fact. In the AWS, you do not clear any exams without the mock exams and the mock questions. If you don't have, there is a rare case that you will be clearing the exam. All right. So just remember, user data, data encryption, EC2, scaling, a lot more is your responsibility. Usually the question is framed around similar syntax. There is a user data, there is a data encryption. So whose responsibility it is? Ours, not the cloud provider. So this is the first that we have gone through with that. I know this is a really long video, almost 30 minutes. But this is how you study the cloud. I don't want to give like 100 videos in the series. I just want to give you 5 or 10 videos, and that's it. You have cleared the first exam. That's why the videos are going to be a little bit longer. And that's it. This is the first step into that. Now in the next one, we'll move into that. Let me in my notes. The next one is for the IAM. So we'll be studying about the IAM. We'll have a smaller videos in between as well, which walk you through with the cloud and how does it look like, the regions and all these things. They will be shorter ones, but they are just here to give you actual practical implementation of that. So that is it. Let's catch up in the next video. And don't forget to boost my motivation as well in the comment section as well. We are targeting for 100 comments. Let's go ahead and get started.